In this video, we're going to think about who were the Puritans and why they opposed Elizabeth I over religion. Who were Puritans then? Well, it's really easy to remember who Puritans were because they were Protestants. So we're going to think Puritans, Protestants. So we're going to use that P to help us remember actually quite a lot of things about Puritans. But they're a really strict form of Protestants. They want to purify absolutely everything in the church. They think that everything in the church should be based on the Bible. They have very strict moral codes. They're very, very strict in the way that they live their lives as well. They wanted to purify the church because they felt that the reforms that Elizabeth I had already made weren't Protestant enough for them, and they wanted the Church of England to become even more Protestant than it already was. They want everything based on the Bible, they want much plainer services, and they want to remove anything that they see as being Catholic or not completely Protestant from the Church of England. So before we go any further in thinking about why the Puritans opposed Elizabeth, we actually have to think about what Elizabeth had already done to religion. When Elizabeth came to the throne in 1559, she set up her religious settlement. Now she had to do this because she inherited the throne from her half-sister Mary, or Bloody Mary, who had taken the church back to being Roman Catholic after Henry VIII had created the Church of England, as you know. So in order for Elizabeth to establish the Church of England that she would inevitably want, because she was the daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII, the woman that Henry had created the Church of England in order to marry, Elizabeth is going to need to take the Church of England out of the control of Rome and re-establish that Church of England. So there are two parts to this 1559 settlement when she came to the throne. The first part is the act of supremacy. So the word supremacy is like from supreme, who is in charge. And that takes England away from the Roman Catholic Church and the control of the Pope in Rome, and it makes Elizabeth supreme governor of the Church of England. Her father, Henry VIII, when he had set up the Church of England, he had the title of the supreme head of the Church of England. But that upset lots of people because they said, well, Jesus is the head of the church, not a human on earth. So she uses the phrase supreme governor as a bit of a concession. So she's saying, well, I'm going to run the church, but I'm actually acknowledging the position of Christ. The second part of the religious settlement was the act of uniformity. So uniform, making things the same. So you've got the act of supremacy, that's who's in charge, and the act of uniformity is how we do religion, essentially. So this sets out the style of worship, the types of churches, and the kind of experience that people would have had in the Church of England day to day. So it also makes church attendance compulsory. You have to go to a Church of England church. She introduces a new Book of Common Prayer. She has the Bible in English and makes every parish church in the country have a Bible in English so that people can read it. So all of those things are very Protestant and things that lots of Protestants would have agreed with, but she tries to make a few concessions to the Catholics that are still quite vocal within England, particularly in the north. As we know, there were lots of Catholic people who didn't want the church to return to being Protestant. So she includes some concessions to them, things like the decoration. You can still have ornate, pretty, fancy churches, and things like robes called vestments that the priests would have worn. Those can still be quite elaborate. Things like music as well. So really what you've got here is a church that is, in terms of its beliefs, very, very Protestant, but aspects of its style still appear to be quite Catholic. So what was the problem then? Why were Puritans unhappy? Because this is a Protestant church. It's a Protestant religious settlement. There's no doubt about that. So what reasons did Puritans have to be unhappy? Well, Elizabeth saw the 1559 settlement when she came to the throne as final. That was her word, that was how religion was going to be. Puritans, though, are quite okay at the start. Many of them who'd exiled themselves in other Protestant countries, such as the Netherlands, came back to England because they were excited to have a Protestant monarch. But they think she's going to go further, and so they're waiting essentially for more than what happened in 1559. And when it becomes quite clear that that is final and that Elizabeth doesn't intend to do any more Protestant reforms, they actually get a little bit fed up because they hated those elements of Catholic style that were still there in the Act of Uniformity. So the decoration in churches, the music, the vestments, they really opposed those. They didn't want anything to do with Catholicism or to do with the Pope. So they wanted priests, for example, to be much more educated. They really believed in things like preaching and prophesying. And so they want that to be more prominent within the churches. And some Puritans are really quite extreme. They want to get rid of all church hierarchy. They don't think that politics belongs within the church. So they want to get rid of that church hierarchy, the bishops, the archbishops. But that's a problem for Elizabeth because she's supreme governor of the Church of England. If you get rid of hierarchy and politics within the church, then you ultimately have to get rid of her role within the church, which is something that she would be very much opposed to and is a really big threat to her power and authority. So this video has explained then who Puritans were and why they were unhappy with Elizabeth's religious settlement. We'll look another time at what Puritans did to actually threaten Elizabeth during her reign.